Hi, I'm Mr. Davis. I'm one of the band directors over at Clear Lake Intermediate, and I'm going to take you through the faster technical etude for saxophone. So, if we come over here, the first thing that we see, our key signature, we're in the key of G, so that means we have one sharp, and that's going to be F sharp. We're pretty used to that at this point. Now, what I do want us to pay attention to is our time signature. So this is in 3/8, which means that we get 3 beats per measure, but our 8th note is what gets the beat. So whereas in our slower etude, we're in 3/4, we still have 3 beats, but it's the quarter note. Down here, it's the 8th note that gets the beat. So our 16th notes would be counted as 1 and 2 and 3 and. I know that's a different than what most of us are going to have been used to, but it's a lot simpler than what it may seem at first. We just have another set of beams. So we start with a pickup on beat 3, and we have 2/16, so it's going to be 3 and, 1 and, 2 and, 3 and. Pay attention to your articulations. We've got a slur mixed in there. Going on, we have an accidental in measure 2. We've got a D sharp. And the rhythm is the same these first few measures. Make sure you're paying attention to your tonguing. Your first note of beat 3 is a G. It's going to be very easy to skip that and want to play something else, but that G repeats from 2 to 3. Measure 4, pay attention that this 8th note gets its full value of 1 beat. In measure 5, we have grace notes. If you think back to the slow etude, at the very last measure, we had a grace note there. It's going to work just the same way, right before the beat. Again, I suggest practicing without the grace notes and being able to play this all in time, 1 and 2 and 3 and, before we add the grace note for a 1 and 2 and 3 and. D. Now we have a slur over the first 3 notes and not just the first 2, so the tonguing pattern is going to be different. Da. Make sure we're getting that dynamic as well. Going on, same exact rhythm. Practice without the grace note first, and then add it back in so that we can get our timing correct. Go as slow as you need to make it be correct. Make sure you're marking which fingering you're going to use for A sharp. It should be side because you're coming from B before and after. 7, again, another grace note. Make sure you're paying attention to that. Same thing. Go slow. Count through it, 1 and 2 and 3 and, before adding the grace note back in. We've got another accidental here for G sharp. So just make sure that your G sharp key is not going to stick. Measure 8. This is 1 full beat, remember, because we're in 3/8. So that's 1, 2, beat 3 are these 2 16th notes. We've got a new dynamic. We're up to forte. And going back to our rhythm from the beginning. It's very similar, but instead of it's actually the exact same thing that we played at the very beginning. So if you can play the first 4 measures, you can play 9 to 12 as well. Looking into 13, we're diminishing, or we're doing a diminuendo down to a piano, so we're going to get softer. Our rhythm is the same, 1 and 2 and 3 and, slurring the and of 1. Going through to 15, this quarter note is 2 beats, so make sure you're giving it its full value. It's not just 1, it's 2 because we're in 3/8. And same thing for measure 16. And then we've got a dynamic change to forte. Continuing on, 17 is basically your G scale, only starting on an A. And measure 18, this is where things look a little trickier. So to count through this, this is a dotted 16th and a 32nd note. So if this were in 3/4, you would see it as a dotted 8/16. So you'll count it the same as that would be 1 E and a 2 is going to be your rhythm there. 1 E and a 2. And then your 16th note here is on the and of 3. So you'll have in this full measure 1 E and a 2 and 3 and 1. Make sure that these are different. This dotted 8th note is a beat and a half. 1 E and a 2 and 3 and 1. Lots of metronome work will make that work really well. Going on 19, a couple accidentals, C sharp and G sharp. Measure 20, same rhythm as measure 18. 1, 2, and 1. So be very careful with your counting. Go slow until you can do it correctly. 21 accidentals, G sharp, and then a G natural. We've got a bunch of skips in here, so again, practice slow. Alternate the rhythms to practice these patterns going through. So playing it long, short, long, short, long, and then switching to short, long, so that you can practice making these jumps and then put it back to as written. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1. Pay attention to your tonguing. Look for opportunities to add in some dynamics here, because if it's all sounds the same, then it's going to make it really boring. First, I'm going to play through it at a reduced tempo. The written tempo is 8th note equals 152, and I'm going to play it right now at 8th note equals 90. And then I'll play through it again at the 152. Whatever tempo you go, make sure it's correct and it sounds good first.
Mm-hmm.